few videos ago, I did a challenge. I had 100 idiots go up against one super genius. And, spoiler alert, the super genius was able to win, mainly because he had a lot of resources around him. So, today, thanks to a YouTube comment, we're going to flip the sides and see what happens. So today, we're going to have 100 normal geniuses with absolutely no resources go up against one really super idiot with a ton of resources, and we're gonna see who wins. So as you see, I've already created the map here. It's similar to the one in a couple of videos ago, but on the left side, this is a desert, mainly empty. I gave the geniuses a few berries, that way they won't starve immediately. But in terms of resources, there's pretty much nothing they can use. And over here on the genius side, they have abundant amounts of trees, and up here they can even expand and colonize this enchanted forest. And in a second, I will be adding lots of resources too that they can use. So we're gonna add plenty of resources. We're gonna add some stone, some silver, adamantium, mithril, ore deposits, and lastly, some gold. And on the genius side, absolutely nothing. So now it's time to spawn our guys in. So we're gonna start by making our super idiot, just one guy. Ironically, they actually start with the genius trait. This will not last though. So we will quickly take off the genius trait, and we are going to put stupid, ugly, short-sighted, and slow. So this guy is not the brightest. And on the other side, we will put down our 100 geniuses. And there are all 100 of them. So we're going to give them a trait ring, and we're just going to give them genius and attractive. Everyone gets that, and now we see how each one develops. We're going to rename the factions. We're going to rename the idiots to the dumbos, and the smart ones to the nerds. Looks like the nerds have already founded a new village. Pretty smart move on their part, especially since they went into an area with plenty of berries. You can tell that they're pretty smart. Over here, the dumbos have raised their population, which is good. So, like last video, we are going to have them fight around year 200. The geniuses are already at level 7, while the dumb people are just at level 2. The battle we see between these two should finally answer the question, does intelligence or resources win, at least in this game? Despite having some berries, as we can see here, the nerds are suffering from starvation. 40 people, which is 40% of their population, are currently starving. In comparison, the dumbos are doing just fine. Another village has been founded by the nerds, this time on the west side of the mountain range, and another one too. And another thing that we're going to be doing is every few years, we are going to redo the trait ranks in the area, because as you can see with this guy right here, despite being a direct descendant of the stupid and ugly person, he only has one of the traits. So every few years, we will be doing a trait rank to make sure that each side keeps their traits and they don't vary off too much. So on this side, we're going to keep everyone dumb, while on this side, we're going to keep everyone about the same way that they are. The nerds' population is finally starting to grow, and the dumbos are still going at a fairly slow pace. And at this point, despite having no resources by year 26, the nerds have really been able to stabilize their society. They have no starvation issue at all right now. Now at this point, we are going to make a giant wall in between to prevent the nerds from going over to the right side, because right now it seems like they will. The dumbos have finally made their first village over by the adamantium deposits. A fairly smart move considering how dumb they are, but they're still a vast ways behind the smart people. The smart people have finally begun investing into farming, which is huge for them, so starvation should no longer be an issue for them. And both sides are starting to expand slowly faster now, but the nerds are still just soaring up in population, about across 700 now. The dumbos are just surpassed 100. Now remember, the war will start at year 200, so even though the nerds have an extreme growth right now, they have already colonized about half their land. Once they get all the land, they can't go anywhere else. But as we're at year 50, the dumbos still have 150 years to develop and conquer more land. And the nerds are really starting to grow pretty quickly here. They're starting to harvest the adamantium. If we look into this specific village here in part of the dumbos, you can see that they've harvested a large portion of it. And the Dumbos have even begun basic shipbuilding. We're going to reaffirm some of these traits now. And the nerds have, in just 67 years, have almost already conquered their entire land area. While the idiots are a bit more slow to do that, but since there's still a lot of time left, it might not really matter. Just looking at the population graphs, the nerds, despite having pretty much no resources, are already, they literally just crossed 2,000 people. This is actually the fastest population growth I've ever seen in worldbox ever without the use of debug options. As you can see here, there are absolutely no civ cheats on at all. And while by almost year 90, the nerds are still growing at an extremely fast rate. As you can see here, they don't have much land left to go, while the Dumbos have actually grown fairly quickly, have almost colonized their entire southern island, and still have the entire northern enchanted forest to work with. The main issue I see with the dumb people is that, as we see their culture here, by year 200, if they don't have the knowledge to actually use the minerals or resources they have, they're gonna lose this war handily. We are approaching year 100 here. As it turns out, the nerds have pretty much run out of room. They have a little sliver of land here, but there won't be any more villages, and as we can see, their population is still going up, but it's staying relatively the same. They're already a level 61 culture, which means they're gonna max out pretty soon. And since we're going with year 200, that's just gonna stay how it is. So basically, it's gonna be how far can the dumb people get in that time. And as we can see here, a large ship has finally taken some of the Dumbos into the enchanted forest up north. They have begun colonizing, and for the most part at the moment, most of these villages, despite having a ton of people in each of them, have pretty much maxed out the amount of people they can hold. However, on this side, even in the south, the Dumbos still have a large amount of area to work with. Now, if you look here, remember, these smart people have developed a mine that has, as you can see, is spawning some resources that they can use. So they're not completely resourceless thanks to their intelligence. The nerds have maxed out their culture, while the Dumbos are still lacking behind. The Dumbos only have 1,300 people, while the nerds have 2,200 soldiers. So based on the mines, as we can see in the rich biome, looks like the best resource they can get is steel. As we're looking at their king here, he has steel armor. By year 140, the Dumbos have begun to experience some pretty substantial population growth in compared to the nerds who, as we can see, have just stagnated since year 100 essentially. And at year 150, the Dumbos have been able to close the population gap pretty handily, but the nerds still have more soldiers than the Dumbos even have people. And with only 25 years left, the Dumbos don't really have that much time, and they have not even developed a single trait allowing them to use their resources yet. If the Dumbos can prolong the war, they can have enough time where they can actually start using their resources, and that'll be the key to their victory. I mean, the Dumbos are just really stupid, which I guess makes sense in how they're picking what knowledge is to research. And there we are. As we can see here, the Dumbos do still have all the resources, but they have roughly 700 less soldiers. We're gonna clear the gap between the countries, and it's time to declare war. And an army of 190 people in this boat right here are sailing over. And I think they just dropped them all off in the southeast tip. Oh, they dropped another army off too. And they're dropping armies off all around. It looks like they might actually win this town down here. They have a ton of soldiers here. And what I notice is the smart people don't have any boats. This might be a huge turning point in the war. How do they not have any boats? They can't actually build any ships, at least for the time being, meaning that they're not even going to be able to get over onto the eastern side. And 5 years into the war, not much has happened. Over 1,300 people have already died. The nerds have only lost 400 compared to the 1,000. But I'm going to give these smart people a little bit of land, and then I'm going to just give them a tiny amount of resources. So hopefully they can make at least one port. So as this war is still going, the Dumbos actually have a decently sized army, and they continue to just absolutely send attack after attack, wave after wave onto the enemy. After 15 years of war, 2,700 people have died. 2,000 on the Dumbos, and only 700 on the nerds. But as we can see here, population figures and even army sizes really haven't changed that much. And if you look right here, the Dumbos have actually been able to capture a nerd town, but it looks like it will fall quickly again. It looks like they have finally made a dock. The nerds have finally made a dock, but if you see, blue ships are finally starting to get on the seas, meaning that the nerds, for the first time in this entire war, can now send troops over to the east side. This is going to be exciting. And as we see, huge armies are now heading to ships on the left side. They're getting ready to plan an invasion. The Dumbos have finally began researching metals, meaning that in a few years, if they can hold out, they have a chance to begin using their adamantium and all their resources, completely turning the tide of the war. And small nerd forces have been deployed around, but they have been mainly ineffective so far. A huge battle here, and I think this is the capital, and it looks like the Dumbos will actually be victorious in this battle. And the king, as we can see here, of the Dumbos was slain, which might sound like a bad thing, but remember, the king was very dumb and a not very good leader, so if the new leader's better, this could actually be a very good thing. And as we see it here, yes, the new king of the empire is a normal person. Actually, they're actually enchanted because they're from the enchanted forest. The war has been going on for nearly 40 years now. 7,500 people have died. 5,000 of them from the Dumbos alone. 2,500 of them from the nerds. And looking at specific villages, it looks like a village Ugensen is about to fall potentially, which would be huge for the nerds, because not only would they gain a foothold in Dumbo territory, if we look at this village, it has 318 adamantium in its storage, and they're going to take it. They can now ship the adamantium back to the capital to be produced and strengthen up their army. As a matter of fact, 2 villages are going to fall here, and it looks like the enchanted biome is really beginning to fall. And the capture of these villages is also huge, because remember, before this, the nerds only had 1 port. If we look here, Ugensen also has another port, meaning that they can have more ships and therefore send more troops over. And it looks like the war will be over somewhat soon, and the enchanted forest in year 248 is finally going to fall, meaning that the only thing left is the Dumbo mainland. And the first push into the mainland has begun. A last-ditch effort to capture the town of Ehinsen by the Dumbos has begun. Another town is about to fall, and more villages are falling. In the capital city of Dudwan's fallen, Yuko-Ad's fallen, Ashiko's fallen, and the last town of Imo is about to fall. I'm going to pause right before the war ends, and we're going to check some final stats right here. The final stats of the war is it took 57 years, 9,700 people died. In terms of losses, the Dumbos lost 6,500 people, and the Dumbos comparatively only lost 3,200, which is essentially exactly half the amount the Dumbos lost. And as that falls, the war has ended. And that answers the question. If 100 poor geniuses went up against 1 rich idiot, the geniuses would eventually pull through. I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and if you have any more suggestions, just let me know.